For almost 2 decades now, the 1st Congressional District has been New Hampshire's swing district, moving with the political winds. But Democrats have held the seat now for 3 terms, with Congressman Chris Pappas winning the last 2 contests. He's seeking a 3rd term and is our guest this morning. And Congressman, let's just jump right into it. You run into a voter on the street. You've got 1 minute to convince them that you deserve re-election. What do you say?
Well, we've been working in a bipartisan fashion to address the problems that we face as a state and a nation. We're working to lower costs when it comes to making more energy supplies available and ensuring that the programs are there to help people this winter. We're ensuring that we're working to protect people's personal freedoms, including the right to choose. And we're also doing things to invest in manufacturing, invest in our infrastructure that are going to create good-paying jobs and dividends for the future. This election is a contrast about 2 different visions for the state. My vision is one where we all come together, we work to solve problems, and we can do it in a bipartisan fashion. My opponent is an ideological bomb thrower. Frankly, there are too many people like that in Washington. They stand in the way of progress, and if the Republicans take over Congress, we're going to see a lot of hostage-taking happening in Washington, D.C. They're going to threaten the solvency of Social Security and Medicare. They're going to hold up funding for our Democratic ally, Ukraine. So we've got to stay focused on what we do to make this economy work for our small businesses, for our families. I know this as a small business owner. I've seen the economy up close here in New Hampshire, and I'm going to continue to bring that New Hampshire know-how, those New Hampshire voices with me to Washington to do this work.
As you sit here right now, can you say the southern border of the United States is secure?
The southern border is at crisis right now, and we need to take more steps to make it secure. And I have called on the Biden administration to bring every resource to bear to make sure that law enforcement are well equipped and that we have the technology that's needed to interdict drugs and to stop human trafficking. That's why I've introduced bipartisan legislation with a Republican colleague from Texas, to create joint operations centers that will allow for collaboration between different layers of law enforcement on the border. We've seen the announcement recently of New Hampshire National Guard going to the border. Those are on federal orders. So the administration is taking steps, but there's a long way to travel to make sure that we're stopping illegal substances and we're getting a handle on this migrant crisis. It's a symptom of a broken immigration system, and we have gone from administration to administration to administration without solutions that are actually going to work to solve the problem. So long term, we need bipartisan immigration reform. We need to make sure that we're allowing individuals who are coming from Northern Triangle countries and other places an opportunity from their home country to apply for asylum, have their case adjudicated without having to travel to our southern border. And we need to invest more in border security, and I've supported that in Congress.
Because so many of these people are asylum seekers and not just traditional undocumented immigrants, do you believe all of them should be allowed to stay?
Well, I think that we need to partner with nations in Central America, in the Caribbean, other places that these folks are coming from to make sure that there is stability and economic opportunity. People wouldn't undertake this journey were their lives not threatened, were they not fearing for their safety, or if they had a good paying job and a future for their families. You're not seeing people wanting to go to China or Russia, by the way. They want to come to the United States, and that's why we need a safe and orderly process for people to apply for asylum and to come to this country to want to work hard and achieve their American dream. That's how we've become the greatest country on earth. Immigration is an important part of our future, but we need an orderly system. We need immigration reform. We need security at our border. Those are things that I'll all continue to support.
But Congressman, should they all be allowed to stay?
Well, I don't think this country can have unlimited immigration, and so we need an orderly system for people to apply for asylum, to seek asylum at our border, but we've got to make sure that we're protecting America's interests and certainly continuing to pursue illegal substances that are coming into this country. I've done work on that, and that's such an important problem we've got to solve.
When it comes to law enforcement, 2 years ago you supported ending qualified immunity for law enforcement officers. As we see crime becoming more of a political issue, particularly in states that passed these so-called bail reform laws, do you still stand by that position today?
Well, that was a compromise bill. It was a bipartisan bill. We were looking for compromise to try to get something done to deal with banning chokeholds, no-knock warrants, other common sense steps that law enforcement are implementing here in New Hampshire. I think as we look forward, we've got to make sure that we're supporting our local police departments and law enforcement that are doing great work on the ground here in New Hampshire. I've worked with local police chiefs, including Chief Rondo from Wolfboro, on a bill that would invest in our police departments, provide provide recruitment and retention bonuses as they seek to hire up and fill out their ranks. We've also got to target grants to smaller police departments so that they can upgrade their technology and their professional practices. I've done that with my legislation that's been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police. So we'll keep working in a bipartisan fashion on this. I want to fund the police here in New Hampshire. We've worked to do that. And I'll continue to make sure the voices of New Hampshire law enforcement are front and center as we have these conversations.
If you had to vote on qualified immunity again to strip it away, would you vote yes again?
Well, I wouldn't vote on that as a standalone issue. I voted for the George Floyd bill as a way to create a conversation about how we move policing into the 21st century. That's a conversation that continues to happen here in New Hampshire. And law enforcement is working with community stakeholders to help make sure that people can trust that their local law enforcement is working for them. People need law enforcement in their community to be keeping the peace. I honor the profession and the work that they do, and I want to invest in them, make sure that they have the tools to do their jobs.
Your opponent accuses you of misrepresenting her on key issues. One of those is abortion. On what basis can you accuse her basically of lying when she says she will not vote in favor of federal restrictions?
Well, she supports what the Supreme Court did. The Supreme Court overturned 50 years of precedent. And allowed a third of states already to ban abortion outright. A number of others are moving to pass really restrictive measures. So she supports the decision that has resulted in restrictions. And this question around a national abortion ban, she has said out on the campaign trail that she is a pro-life Republican and will always vote that way. So it's really important that we have a pro-choice vote in Congress representing the people of this district. My opponent wants politicians to make this decision for people. I want people to make this decision for themselves. So that's the difference in this campaign. And we can achieve that by passing a law at the federal level that will protect reproductive freedom in this country. That's something that's supported by the people of New Hampshire. She won't support that. She opposes the right to choose. And I think this is a very defining issue in the campaign.
On Social Security, your opponent supports privatization, but she says she wants to grandfather in the people who have already paid into the system. She's not backing away from that position. You've got to do something to extend the life of this program. We know it can't go on forever. So doesn't that mean having to raise taxes?
Well, it means having the kind of bipartisan cooperation that resulted in fixes to Social Security in the past. Now, my opponent says she supports raising the retirement age. She wants people in New Hampshire to work longer and harder until they can retire. She has this dangerous plan to privatize it, gamble it on the stock market, which wouldn't just jeopardize the benefits of people tomorrow. It would jeopardize the solvency of the program today and bring us further away from what we want to do and what we should be doing, which is shoring up the program as people know it so that it continues to pay the benefits that people need. So we need to be having these kind of conversations. We need a commission that will work across the aisle to deliver security for our seniors and for our workers. And I would look to be a part of that in the next Congress.
For most of the 20th century, the Democrats were positioned as the party of the working class. And when working people right now are getting crushed by the high cost of energy, shouldn't the goal be to get them cheap energy as quickly as possible in the way that we already do, which is largely through fossil fuels, rather than trying to have them hang on and wait for some kind of green energy future that might not even deliver the relief they need right now, let alone in the future?
Well, we do need supplies today, and I've supported steps that will help address that. I've called on the administration to tap the strategic reserve, which has helped drive down gas prices, and I've called on the president to work collaboratively with the private sector to try to expand refining capacity and make sure that we have our energy needs met in an affordable fashion. That's absolutely what our economy needs right now. But we also know we can't continue to hang our hat on oil and gas for the long run. We're being ripped off by big oil. We're being ripped off by these foreign countries that are manipulating energy markets. And so we need true energy independence in this country in a way that can create a more clean, sustainable future, cheap sources of renewable energy. That's why I supported legislation this summer that will make significant investments in this sector. It will create 30,000 clean energy jobs right here in New Hampshire by supporting offshore wind, solar development, hydro development. Those are the kind of things that will power our homes and our vehicles for the future, but we can't let up on what we need to do today to make sure those resources are there and that they're affordable.
How are working people not going to bear the brunt of this, though, who rely so much on fossil fuels, whether they want to or not? How are they not going to end up being stuck with the bill?
Well, we've got to make sure that we're meeting today's need, and that means having the supplies that are adequate. Now, the oil companies look like next year they'll be producing more than they did pre-pandemic, but we went through a 2-year period where they dialed back production. They're content with profits being at record levels while people continue to pay more at the pump. Doesn't have to be that way. We've got the workforce in the energy sector. We've got the supplies that are there. They have thousands of leases. We need to push the industry to produce more today so that people aren't getting hit hard by home heating oil prices and prices at the pump. But we also have to keep our eye on that medium to long-term transition, which is where most people and where the auto companies want to take us, and where we need to go, frankly, to have a sustainable future.
Would you support a natural gas pipeline coming into the 1st Congressional District to bring prices down in New Hampshire?
Well, natural gas is an important part of the mix today, and one of the reasons why we're seeing high electric rates is because we're overly reliant on natural gas for our electricity generation, but we do need capacity to serve our businesses and our homes. I hear that from manufacturers in New Hampshire that rely on natural gas, and so that's something that's really important for the moment. But as we think about where we need to go tomorrow, it's offshore wind, it's solar, it's making sure that we have a grid that can handle the loads and is resilient, and we can do this in a way that creates jobs.
All right, quickly, would you want President Biden to come and campaign for you here?
I'll be happy to show him around New Hampshire if he wants to listen to the people of the state, but I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet in this campaign. This is about having a voice in Washington that understands New Hampshire, that can work in a collaborative, bipartisan fashion. I've done that 2 terms, and that's why I'm asking for the support of folks for another 2 years.
Congressman Chris Pappas, thanks for joining us on Close Up.
Thanks, Adam.